Hey everyone, it's Kai, and today we're going to talk about the standard tier list for set 5, which is coming out very soon. Like, I think this week soon, right? So yeah, this is going to be an English tier list, so things that are only released in Japanese, like Zorg Graves, New Orphis, I'm not going to really rate at all, because they're not set 5, they're Festival Collection, right? And if the set hasn't really come out yet, like Shaman King, not going to talk about it, right? English only. Now, let's kind of talk about the tiers. So anything in S and A, I'd consider to be a very good deck. If we're talking about like tournament worthy, I think S and A are definitely like extremely tournament worthy decks. If your deck is in B, it's also good. It's also good. If you don't like anything in the top 2, you can take it there. If this is like since this is like we're currently in a team league format, right? So we need 3 decks. So if you pick like any of your like third decks, because there's definitely going to be at least 2 decks I think that you like someone on your team likes from the top 2 lines. Going in the B option, it's not bad too. But any deck that you see in those top 3, I think in a tournament, for example, I think you have to respect it. And then I think everything else goes into the C to E section. And just a heads up, of course. I'll put there will be a token Rambu. It's going to look a bit weird, but personally, I don't really rate it that much. Spoilers. Anyway, let's kind of start off. So let's kind of talk about the best decks in the format currently. It is still Magnolia. I think just Magnolia is insane. Technically, Magnolia is like slightly better with the Maple. But yeah, Magnolia, very solid deck. I think if you go to a tournament, you definitely want to put it there. The other deck that is super popular as well is also Gravidia World, and I still think it retains that popularity. It's just overall a great deck. Nothing's really changed much about it. Even the new like kind of Ava Dual Nation cards, I've seen some people play it as well. So overall, these 2 decks are very solid, and ever since the addition of Lyrical Monastery 2 as well, the Kyrie deck, these 3 are basically like something that's been they're just overall very consistent, very solid decks, and if you just built a team around these 3 decks, I think you'd do very well. But, you know, it doesn't have to be always them. There's still a lot of decks actually in like just the tier under it. They're very close, by the way. Most of these games are literally just decided by like one over trigger or 1 trigger, right? So if you don't pick from the top 3, you still have a lot of choices. Something like a Bastion, for example. Bastion's still always very scary, and just ever since it's buff, I think it's quite funny. Like at the beginning, Bastion wasn't that played as much. It wasn't as popular, but as the kind of season went on for set 4, it just rose up more in popularity. It had a huge splash at one time, and it's just maintained like its strength ever since, and it's definitely still a very strong deck to kind of take around with you. With that, Bruce as well. Bruce has kind of been fluctuating up and down kind of bit. Team League tournament, I think you still have to, it's still fine, it's still good. And something like a Greedon, for example, this goes straight into tier E. Very bad deck. But like Seraph is a good one. Another one, and Nirvana. Right, these are all very solid decks. I think I'm not gonna order them in any way. By the way, I'm not gonna order them. They're just gonna be in like the kind of rank, unless I specifically talk about them. Like if I say something about like Seraph, for example, I think it might be lower, kind of a bit lower in the A rank, just because like a lot of its matchups aren't exactly that great. I mean, especially the addition of like something like Kyrie as well. People can easily play around these decks, and people learn, right? I hope people learn, but people learn on how to play around your Seraph Snow shenanigans, your Pure Light shenanigans. So it's technically got a weaker because people get smarter. Right? That's just how it is. Let's kind of talk about a set 5 deck, for example. I think the best set 5 deck to come out has been Tamagura. It's quite surprising. It's, you know, I think we were talking about like Thegre before, and like, it's so amazing. Oh, look at these nostalgia cards. But actually, Tamagura is kind of the sleeper hit. The Foxy Lady, right, has been just doing very well. I think it's just the best performing deck out of set 5, and it sits in a solid B rank. I think if this deck would just be like in the high B rank, right, I think I'd still consider a lot more other decks over Tamagura, but I wouldn't be, if someone wanted to take it like as a 3rd slot, I wouldn't be too fussed. Barrow Magnus as well. This is like an A rank deck. I think this is probably the last A rank deck maybe out of all of them. And yeah, I think this looks like a pretty solid like top bracket so far. Roroa, another new one. This goes straight into E, unfortunately. This really has nothing really going on for it. Unfortunately, it just doesn't do it. Maybe E is a bit too harsh. Maybe like D, low D, right? There's still worse decks, unfortunately. Like Chaos. This is unfortunately just like a bad Barrow Magnus. But if you guys like to play some semi Highlander, then sure, right? But it's really not. It just doesn't have much of an impact. Thegria. This is actually a pretty good deck. I would put this in B as well, the same rank as Tamayura. I think it's like a weak, I'd say it's like a weak Bastion in a way, but you know, you get to confirm persona rides, you get to just, you know, do like kind of like restanding stuff. So I think it's pretty good. It's a nice rogue deck, also one of the better decks from that set as well. And then let's talk about nostalgia, right? PBO I think is like the best nostalgia out of the three, followed by like probably like Overlord and MLB. Unfortunately, MLB just isn't that big. If I also rank the rest of set 5, they're pretty much just sitting like B, like B and under, or like if we'll talk about, let's talk about Overlord. I think Overlord's like a C. MLB kind of like a C or a D. I don't think it's as bad as Roar, so I think it's just, these should just kind of sit there. Unfortunately, make not much of an impact in the metagame there. But if you want something from set 5 that's really good, your Tamayuras, your Thegras, and your PBO, I think is good enough, right? It's good enough. And I think they're going to be relatively cheap. You know, they're going to be relatively cheap. Set 5 overall, I think is well known to be cheap, right? Pretty good. Other decks that kind of round out tier B, I think, is like a Bav Saga, for example. This is pretty nice. It's got its tools, but it's just not as, I wouldn't say it's like as strong as the other to fit into like tier A, right? It's got tools. It's got an early game. It's very linear though, but it looks good. It looks good, right? But the thing going for it has a lot of early pressure, which can kind of beat a lot of these other decks if you're like they're not careful, right? A lot of the grade 4 decks need time to set up, but a lot of the times, like, you need to draw those pieces. Your whole game plan is kind of centered around that point in the game, and a lot of these other decks can slowly get away with it. So overall, I think Bav Saga sitting at like B, I think is where it should be, right? Where it should be. Oh, we also missed Ava. Ava actually doesn't, unfortunately, is like I think it's a C tier deck. It doesn't do enough, which is sad. Totally forgot about Ava. Other decks, I think, okay, Flagberg and Zorga. I think they're nice. I actually think they're nice rogue decks. I think Flagberg overall, I think the Flagberg community, right, has been really pushing for Flagberg status to become better and better. And I think they've relatively succeeded, and Flagberg is only going to get better from here on out. Also, it's like Zorga as well. Zorga, I think Zorga has always been this kind of thing in the foreign community. Everyone there loves it, and slowly but surely, I think there's been a lot more kind of ways to build Zorga. I just feel like it's never really been like totally solved out, and as kind of tournament seasons progress, you just have like more finessing of like the order lineup and all that. So I feel like these two are kind of in very, very similar like positions. I think putting them at like a rogue, the rogue tier, like a tier B, like B tier is like, it is correct, because it's actually, if you compare it to a lot of the other decks, I think it does very, very well against them. Against maybe the top decks, it might suffer a bit, but even well piled like Zorga decks, for example, right? You don't see it a lot, but hey, it's surprisingly resilient. And if you think things like Flagger, if you're not really careful, it's just basically Inlet Pulse, right? Inlet Pulse saves saves Flagberg. One deck that's been super underperforming is Orphist. Orphist is like D tier, basically. Very, very sad. Very sad. And then something like, let's kind of like round out the other kind of lyrical monasterio, I guess. Right, so Lauren Roll, I think, is just very, very decent. I think can sit with the B tier. I think it's the only deck outside of Kyrie that is kind of scary, because hey, it has big numbers of guard restricted crit. That can always kind of round out games and win games, right? Willista, still pretty bad. Right, Clarissa's like somewhere like here. I think it's like C tier. I definitely had to split these bottom parts, because I couldn't put Clarissa really in the same tier as Lauren Roll. Wings, I think Black Wings have gotten nice like buff, so they kind of sit in the same tier as Clarissa. I think nice rogue deck. Felty Rosa, should they all kind of be similar? Maybe. I think they can be similar. Still kind of a clunky deck, unfortunately. But yeah, I think they kind of sit there. And then Eugene is like kind of in D. It got some support, nothing too crazy. And I think the Hexa Orb can just be, Hexa Orb is like a C tier deck, right? Pretty C tier deck. I think that kind of like rounds out everything except for Token Rambu. Token Rambu, I think, can like just kind of, I think Token Rambu can hang out with the Eugene boys, right? Personally, this is just, I haven't really tested Token Rambu much at all, right? You don't really see it much. I think it can randomly surprise players if they're not careful. And there's definitely some very dedicated Token Rambu players, of course. But overall, I think the power level of the deck is just not strong enough, and I think it gets most of its wins just because people are unprepared, right? So there you have it, right? I don't think this, unfortunately, yeah, don't think this tier list has Token Rumble as well, so I had to use the Vanguard picture. But yeah, that is the tier list. That is the tier list. Basic, again, I just want to say, everything in the top 2 tiers, right? Everything in S tier, great deck, solid pick. Same thing with the A tiers, solid pick. This one has just like, you know, slight, how do you say it, you know? Not as super consistent as S, not as all-round as the S. It's definitely strong in certain ways and definitely fits certain players better. And then the B is just something that's, you know, not as consistent as everything else, but hey, it can still pull off things. And then, you know, C, D, and E. All right, that's it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, bye.